everybody. So my name is Sarah Abbott, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a Master of Wine and I'm based in the UK. And I came to wine really through a love of, well, really a pure love of and the joy of discovering wine and the cultural significance of wine. My day job is actually that I run a marketing agency, and as well as the love of wine, I also love seeing wine being sold profitably. The Old Wine Conference is a non-profit that I co-founded in 2021, which is separate to my main business. And the founding of this non-profit was really motivated by my conviction that nothing happens until something is sold. And the aim of the non-profit, the Old Wine Conference, is to help to create a global value-added category for old vine wine, for heritage vineyards, and to help communicate and realise through the trade a higher value and a higher price and a higher prestige for old vine wine than everything that encompasses. I'd just like to start by thanking the Mia amazing team for hosting us, and also for all the producers who've been so generous with their time and with their wines. I'm just going to kick off this session by giving you some broader context, and I wanted to explain more about the impetus behind the Old Wine Conference and all of the partners, the incredible partners, inspirational people that we work with all over the world to achieve this goal of really changing the market for old vine wine. So, why old vines? So, I think there's a sort of poetic aspect to old vines and old vineyards. And one aspect of old vines which is really valuable is that they act as a muse. And we've seen this on our trip just in Umea today and yesterday. The old vines are really compelling and absolutely inspire enormous creativity and kind of crazy dedication from many of the very best winemakers in a region. So why is this? Well, I think it's fair to say that great old vine wines, the best old wines in the perfect spot, interpreted by contemporary vineyards today, they yield uniquely transcendent wines. We've all had that experience when you have a wine and the hairs go up on the back of your neck and you just know you're in something, you're tasting something that has a transformative effect that really is still connected to the original sort of symbolic and connecting value of wine. The other thing that we have found extremely powerful about old vines is that their old vineyards are containing extremely valuable genetic information, this resource of biodiversity. And not just biodiversity, but agricultural practice diversity is one of the most precious resources we have in wine. It's actually a precious resource, genetic diversity, throughout the whole of agriculture. And we are at a point in agriculture, not just in wine, where there is an increasing sense of urgency that we save this genetic diversity before it's lost. And when we thought we'd solved all the problems with food production, we had the Green Revolution after the World Wars. In wine, phylloxera came, that's sorted. We thought we had silver bullets. And we are now realizing that, in fact, we are in danger of losing one of the most resilient and sort of regenerative aspects of farming, which is this diversity. And we have seen all over the world that old vineyards are not just prized for what they can give of themselves, it's also for the genetic material and the intra-varietal diversity, as well as ancient varieties that they're like arcs. They're like surviving arcs of this genetic diversity. Just on our visit here this week, we had to see how old vines are really embedded into community and into the affluence and the thriving especially of agriculture and rural communities. And this is another worldwide concern at the moment, is how do you maintain prosperity and allow people to live good lives when they're not in the city. So just from travelling around in your vineyards, we've seen how important agriculture is to this territory, and how the development of your unique varieties, your unique training systems is really embedded into the skills and the affluence and the farming, the farming prosperity of a region. And if we lose that, then we're going to have to think very hard about what you replace it with, because as we've seen, it's of enormous value, even if it's not necessarily always recognised. So the Old Vine Conference, so a little bit about us. So we launched in March 2021. It was a lockdown project. We were inspired at the Old Vine Conference by the actions of very visionary people who had done Old Vine awareness raising and cooperation projects in their regions. So organisations such as the South African Old Vine Project, established by Rosa Kruger, a great viticulturalist, an incredibly inspiring figure. Jancis Robinson, who had celebrated, but 20 years ago was writing about the precious resource of the genetic material in old vines. The Barossa Old Vine Charter, Vinho in Chile. We were really inspired by our interactions with these bodies, and my background as a marketer and as someone who works with lots of countries all over the world just made me think that we need to treat this like a super body, almost like a super generic body, because we have to make the categories big and as meaningful and as compelling as possible. And we do that by having so many different threads that show in so many convincing ways all the different facets, which are highly localized, in which this way of looking at viticulture cracks open the farming heart, the heritage heart, and the cultural heart of everything that we love and makes wine so valuable. So it really took off, I have to say, and this is in great part due to my amazing colleague, Belinda Stone, who's our head of marketing and now a co-director of the company. So we had over 56 speakers from all disciplines, and I actually hadn't realised how interesting and how compelling talking about old vines would be. I mean, I thought it would be, but we've seen an enormous response. And if you'd like to view any of our previous sessions, speakers, you can do so by going to our website. And we also launched these field trips, of which this is one. And we found the field trips to be hugely inspiring, and actually one of the best things that we've been able to do, because it's inspired so many connections. And as a result of the field trips, I'm already getting messages from producers in other regions, for example, who are growing Mourvedre, as they call it, in very dry regions in Australia, saying, what are you learning out there? So you see, you can create these networks of people who care and who want to share and learn about best practices from others. We also have our regional ambassadors. These are volunteers who help us simply spread our message and tell us about great old vine practitioners in their countries. So a little bit about definitions. How old is old? Well, there are some defined age limits set by various different organisations. The minimum, and it's the one that we adopt at the Old Vine Conference, is 35 years of age. I know for a Spaniard you may think that's not that old, but there's a tactical reason that many of these organisations set the minimum age as 35 years. The main one actually is that it's around 35 years that vineyards, even healthy old vineyards, can start to become vulnerable to actually being uprooted. And the other that is in most terroirs, it's around 35 years that you start to see the benefits of vine age in terms of the woody reserves in the trunk. You start to see the deeper expansion, penetration, and the health of the root network. But the minimum age does vary across the world. So 35 years in South Africa, 35 in Barossa, 30 in Mali, Chile, 50 in Lodi, USA, 70 in Priorat, and Rioja has introduced a minimum age of 35 years if you want to use the term old vine on that particular designation. Spain is the only country that within the EU that has adopted a legal definition within their regulations to control the use of the term old vines, and it's been led, as I say, by Priorat and Rioja. But otherwise, the term remains legally uncontrolled, although all of these other four organisations control it by having a shared charter of behaviour. So they have basically like a private certification. My feeling is that we shouldn't rush to certify. I think if you try and certify and regulate too early, when you're trying to build a category, you stifle innovation and you make a burden rather than show an opportunity to help producers sell and market and really develop products for their wine. But I think we will move towards certification, and within the OIV, the Office International of Wine, there's a working group at the moment with leading experts from all over the world who are advising the OIV on policy of codifying and actually defining the value of old vines within the global wine sector. And OIV policy is always adopted by EU, so I think we are moving closer towards a policy of protecting old vines, and I think that will also help with some of the tactical implementation of policy. We were hearing today from one of the producers, we went to see how one of the consequences of EU funding for uprooting and investing in vineyards is actually being the loss of some old vineyards. So I think there are many reasons to be hopeful. There is a groundswell of interest at a policy and institutional level, not just at a winemaker and regional level. We also established, with the collaboration of Jancis Robinson and support from Jackson Family Wine Estates, the first cloud database of a registry of old vineyards. This is managed by a team based in the US. It's free to register your vineyards. If there are any contacts here, you have old vineyards of over 35 years that you would like to simply register on the Old Vine Registry, you can go to the website. It's the URL's at the top there, and you can submit your vineyard. We have over 3,000 vineyards now registered. Just under 500 of those are from Spain. Come on, Spain. We're actually about to launch a campaign to get 10,000 vineyards registered within the next 3 years. And I think are we at something like 10,000 hectares at the moment? Is that correct? Yes. So we are currently, we're at 3,000, just over 3,000 entries, which represent 11,000 hectares of old vineyards. We want to get to 10,000, and if it prorates, that will be 30,000 hectares. And the impetus for this is that when you value something, you record it, you name it. We register our babies. It's like when you register something, you say this is important, and we need to know what we have and what we could lose. And I'm going to talk about the loss, the danger of loss in just a moment. So just coming to Spain, I think Spain has many reasons to be positive about your old vine resource. This is a purely empirical statement that I think Spain has more old vines than any other country, probably. But everyone I speak to in wine says, what's happening with Spain with the old vines? You know, surely and indeed you do. And in fact, you have some of the largest kind of most consistent, like contiguous plots of old vines. Some of this is as a result of a slightly kind of benign, not neglect exactly, but you know, a kind of sort of benign sort of little backwater and agricultural practices having not been completely, you know, modernised. And actually some of this is because, sorry. And actually, of course, this is also a deeper history of the role of Spain in the development of the culture of the vine, from the Levant and Etruscans through into the Spanish Peninsula, the Iberian culture, and so on. You have this incredible arc of ungrafted vines. And ungrafted vines are also, there's an intersection, of course, with old vines. And ungrafted vines within this context of thinking of the culture of the farming of wine are becoming extremely interesting to many figures in wine. And there is an organisation founded by Louis Pasquier of Bordeaux, which is actually working to have ungrafted vines protected as intangible cultural heritage, the practice of working with these vineyards. So it's not something this is all happening in isolation. There is a movement to really recognise and honour these the value of these wines. And you've got a lot of them. And for example, and here, they are very happy. So you have a lot of healthy ungrafted vines. The minimum vine age is becoming part of your official quality hierarchy, as I mentioned in Priorat and Rioja. It's a good step, and maybe it will inspire other denominations in Spain to do the same. And then old vines are behind some of your most famous wines, even if they don't necessarily lead with that message. Amaya probably missed some, but I think it's fair to say some of the most famous, beautiful, iconic, visionary, sort of leading wines of Spain, they're from old vineyards, or inspired by old vineyards, or Massal selections from old vines. And then, forgive me for calling your image workhorse, but I think it is the case that, in Spain there's this rather outdated image, certainly from a UK perspective, of regions that are not necessarily, Priorat and Rioja and the regions that have had a lot of international investment. And I think that we see time and time again great winemakers working with old vines in regions such as Murcia and La Mancha. Really get a lot of attention, and they start to change the conversation. And then, of course, you have some amazing research resources and academics who are working with old vines. And so I think you're in a strong position, but you shouldn't hang about in terms of moving forward. Just before talking about the kind of the risks, I just wanted to highlight that we're at a time in the ideas of what matters in farming, where agriculture, as part of culture, is entering into the very highest levels of culturally impactful institutions and policy and funding organisations. This is the latest newsletter from the UNESCO World Heritage Organisation, and you see at the bottom there it says agricultural landscapes. So there is a relatively new category within UNESCO World Heritage, which is for agricultural landscapes, and they're explicitly linking human cultural development to the development of agriculture. And of course, the culture, in terms of cultural exchange, cultural holidays, the value of culture is really what is lifting prosperity all around the world. But actually culture the root of the word is in the farm, because it's when humans start to feed themselves and grow things that we develop civilizations. So this is a statement from UNESCO, the World Heritage. Human cultural development is inexorably linked to the development of agriculture because it is essentially the cultivation of nature, of the physical environment, which has historically shaped and engendered present-day landscapes, and I would say also the communities. This is a UNESCO agricultural heritage site. It's a wine region. Does anyone recognise it? Yes, that is it. Okay, Brad, do you recognise it?
Is it Valdoviano?
No, it's actually it's Alta Douro. Actually, but there are a number of wine regions which have achieved UNESCO agricultural heritage. I've worked with a couple, and I can tell you it's been enormously impactful. It's tension, and they're able to start this conversation about why their farming is so particular and why it deserves attention and respect and why it should be valued. There's nothing to stop you exploring this, I would say, as a region. Yeah. You asked me it. And then I wanted to also, so there's this broader conversation going on about agriculture as heritage and culture, which links into the old vine conversation. There's another conversation which is around a term called land race. And land race, what we would call, what we might call biotypes or even clones. But land race is something that's emerging as a term across food and farming, and it refers to, yes, what you would call biotypes, the intra-varietal diversity that is not a globally adapted cultivar, but from the wild plants comes up through land races, and land races are, in every aspect of farming, being considered anew as a very important part of biodiversity. So, putting this into a wine context, I think we must take wine into this conversation. And certainly for a country such as Spain, where agriculture is still so important, where the food culture is so important, I think there could be great opportunities for combined messaging, where you actually really place your incredible biodiversity cultural practices here in that broader context. And just land races everywhere, even in cannabis. So, but we really need to act now. There's a window, I think, of opportunity where the value of these old vineyards, their genetic diversity, their cultural practices is being recognised. This is just a clip from, it's a photo from a conference session we held with Elias Lopez Montero. His point was, we've lost an enormous number of our old vines already. Pablo Rubio in Ribera del Duero estimates that almost 2/3 of all vineyards in Ribera del Duero were lost between 1999 and 2014. Rioja, Juan Carlos Sancho, do you know him? Great academic, a winemaker. Loss of old vineyards greater than 40 years in Rioja. I don't mean to depress you, but it's just like, I mean, you had a lot, but let's not lose people. Again, you can review his presentation on oldvines.org. So there is a sense of urgency. I don't actually have that data for UMIA, but if it's not too controversial, it would be interesting to gather it because it just focuses the mind and it gets attention on, come on, let's help UMIA protect this. So I think that just my perspective on your strengths. We heard from Sarah Jane and Amaya yesterday on the context of FAMIA, so I'm not going to spend too much on this, but I would just say that you're dry farming experts. I mean, that's an incredibly interesting skill to have. And I think also your 1,000 hectares of ungrafted vines, that's of great interest to many, it's not just communicators, but also researchers around the world. And I would say there's another thing within your sort of Spanish community, as well as the great growers that we've met on this trip doing amazing things with old vines like Elena Ferron, Juan Gil. There are you have like minds in Spain who are doing great work, and I would really encourage you to come together in a kind of initial conversation and network, because this makes you so powerful. So there's Amaran, Fernando Mora in the Sierra de Algueren. I apologize for my pronunciation. Toro, Belén Garcia. And we will be working with Wines from Lumia in our online program through the year. This program is available on our website to view, but essentially, don't underestimate how interesting and how powerful this story is, and how I think that your old vines can really help you forge the future, especially when you're talking about your most premium wines and the highest aspiration of what you want to be. And I think that really they can be used as the future of your organisation, of your denomination, especially when it comes to the genetic material. A little bit about the Old Vine Conference. I won't spend too much more time on that, except to say we would love to answer any questions that you have, and you can find more info about us on our website. A quote from someone you may know, Alvaro Palacios: "Wine from an old vine in the wrong place offers no better quality than a young vine in a fantastic location. However, if everything coincides, old vines will get us the very best, something fascinating due to the mystery that they carry, something that they carry inside, what I would call wisdom of old vines." And I think that's a great summary of why we do this. Thank you. Is from the Instituto Murciano de Investigación y Desarrollo Agrario y Alimentario, also known as UNIDA. And I was researching some of Rocio's papers online, and she's one of the foremost enological researchers into really fine detail and quality of wine and interaction with viticulture. So we're really fortunate to have her speaking to us today.
I just wanted to, as an explanation, why we invited Rocío and UNIDA in an old vine conference today is because we are very aware that we need to protect our old vines. This is why Villa Wines are now a member of the Old Vine Conference, and why we're here, and why we invited you. But at the same time, we know for sure we are in the midst of the climate change in a region already arid, already, as you know, with many issues that we need to face for the future. So we look at the past, and we want to preserve the heritage, but we also, the wine sector, not the council, wants to look at innovation, and we are very aware of UNIDA's research on new varieties crossings with from Monastrell, from our very Monastrell, and the amazing results after 20 or so years of research. So that's why we invited UNIDA, and we invited Rocío as the head of this research to tell you about the future of a possible future in viticulture in Jumilla, because, as I say, we want to preserve heritage, but we want to innovate at the same time. And that's it. That's the link with the new varieties and all parts. Okay?
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Carolina, for the introduction. My presentation is entitled New Adaptation Strategy of Monastrell to Climate Change. As we know, Monastrell is the main variety in the Mediterranean area, specifically in the region of Murcia. This variety represents its position in cultivation varieties in Spain. In the third position, if only taking into account red varieties. This varieties is characterized by having cluster of many design, intense black color, thick skin, principal, and native flavor. In addition, it's very well adapted to our climate, very robust, and late variety. And as said Carolina, the climate change, the consequences of climate change are having affecting in all crops around the world, specifically in vineyards. Due to the high temperatures, low precipitation, this effect can be positive in cold areas, and in hot and dry areas like the region of Murcia are negative, both for quality in grape and wines and for production. In recent time, we are observing in our area a decoupling between technological and phenolic maturity, a faster sugar accumulation and accelerated loss of acidity in berries, an inhibition of synthesis of phenolic and aromatic compounds. These compounds are the main compounds for the organoleptic quality of wines, and changes in disease and response. So to fight these consequences, we can use different strategies. From the viticulture point of view, we can use different culture measures to delay the maturation of the pulp, like branding, thinning, or managed methods, or to use stock management, or the development of plant cover, or irrigation treatment, like absorptive irrigation, for example. From the oenology point of view, we apply alternative technique to use the sulfur, for example, to use tannins, glycations, lysozymes, phytosands, or to apply techniques to correct acidity problems, for example, to use cation exchange resins, or finally, to use technique to reduce the alcohol levels, for example, to use vacuum distillation, rotary color, or to use no-saccharomyces systems. As said Carolina, or Sarah, I don't remember, I belong to IMIDA. IMIDA is the Murcia Institute of Agriculture and Environmental Research and Development Institute. It's a public research center. Our main building is located near or close to the capital, Murcia, but we have other facilities. We have a lot of experimental fields. Or here in Comilla is the experimental winery. The objective of this institute is to support and implement the research and the technological development, providing solutions to the different agricultural sectors of the region of Murcia. So, our approach to try to solve the consequences of the climate change is to obtain new varieties by using breeding programs. To follow this, or to obtain these new varieties, we have to follow different steps. The first step is the selection of parents to carry out trade crosses. For this step, we use as mother plant Monastrell, as father varieties like Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, Tempranillo, or Verdejo. The second step is the selection of new variety by grape quality. The third step is the selection of new varieties by wine quality. And finally, we do the registration of new varieties. All the entire process has lasted 26 years. It's a very long process. Currently, we are working in different research lines. We are obtaining new varieties stemming from Monastrell with high phenol content and adapted to our climate. We have phenol content and less sugar accumulation to elaborate grains with low alcohol content. A new variety, we obtain new variety resistant to powdery mildew and mildew. to pests very important in vineyards. And finally, we are adopting new varieties tolerant to drought and high temperatures. Our breeding program is carried out in our experimental field. This is located here in Bullas, in the western part of the region of Murcia. On the slide, we can see the field, the vineyards. In this part of the region, the climate is semi-arid, and continental is very similar to Milla, and the soil is climate soft. Now I'm going to try to explain in more detail how we get these new varieties. The first stage is hybridization. Hybridization consists in the emasculation of the bunch and pollinization. We have to wait for the monastery's flowering. When we get the flowers, we emasculate the bunch. Emasculate means to remove the stamens. Here in this video, we can see how to do it. It's a very tedious process and you have to do in a very careful way. You have to have a very good eyesight. And on the other hand, we obtain the pollen from the father plants. So finally, we pollinate the emasculated plants with the pollen from the father plant. Then we add the pollinated plants because we want to avoid unwanted fertilization. And then inside the bud, the evaporating is happening. Then we have to wait for the plants growing. When we get the fruit, we obtain the seed. Each seed can be a potential new variety. So then we need to put into seed beds to get the germination of the seed. And then when the plant is growing approximately 5 centimeters, we go to the plant, to the picture. And then we plant them. At the beginning, we plant the seed, and now we are doing a grafting process. So now, when the vineyard is growing, we can start with the selection process. We get 1,591 new varieties. At the beginning, our selection criterion was the following. We want to get a grade with a pH less 3.8, weight very less 1.8, a very high phenolic composition, higher 2,000 milligrams per kilo of anthocyani or higher 2,700 milligrams per kilo of total penetration. Because we also obtained wide varieties, we added a new criterion. This wide variety had to have a malic acid content very high, higher than 2 milligrams per liter. So in the first phase selection, by grade quality, we selected 44 red crosses and 12 white crosses. Then we plant 29 of each selected crosses in order to get enough grape to make one, and then to go through to the second phase selection by good quality. And in the second phase, we selected 10 red crosses and 3 white crosses. Right now, we have 6 new varieties registered recently for Monastrell. 4 of them are characterized by having a high phenol content and altitude to our climate. These are Myrtia, Carnegie, Jebas, and Kimber. Another one we characterize by having a low sugar content, Carbonate. And the last one is a wide variety characterized by being adapted to our climate, Calgary. Only 4 of these 6 new varieties are authorized in region Murcia for winemaking. These 4 are Myrtia, Carnegie, Jebas, and Calblanque. And now in the following slide, I'm going to describe briefly each one. The first one is Myrtia. Myrtia is a cross between Monastrell and Syrah. She's harvesting in the second half of August, approximately 35 days before Monastrell. I have to say that in this season, in our open field, the climate is, or the temperature is approximately 40 degrees. So if we take account the quality grade, the production is very good, higher than 5,000 kilos per hectare. The phenolic quality is excellent. We can obtain anthocyanin, threefold and monastrell grape. The pH very good. And the total acidity is higher than monastrell, almost double. Regarding quality wine, you can observe on the graph how the color intensity is very high. We obtain wines with threefold values before those obtained in monastrell wines. The total phenol indices on content is very high, double than monastrell wine, or the anthocyanin content is excellent, or for the monastrell wine. The following is Cabernet. Cabernet is a cross between monastrell and Cabernet Sauvignon. This variety is harvested in the first half of September, approximately 16 days before monastrell. Regarding quality rate, it's very similar to Mirtia, because the yield is very similar, the phenolic quality like Mirtia, very excellent, the pH very good, the total acidity is higher than monastrell, perhaps a little bit less than Mirtia. With respect to the quality wine, it's very similar in the Mirtia wines because the color intensity is very high, the total phenol content is again very high, and the anthocyanin content very good, threefold the monastrell wines. Perhaps a little bit less than Mirtia, but I have to say that this variety had a very good content of tannins and is a variety very tolerant to drought. The third variety is Hevas. Hevas is a cross between monastrell and Cabernet Sauvignon. This is variety is harvested very close to Calnegre in the first half of September. This variety regarding quality grade, the production is higher than the previous one. The phenolic quality is very similar to the previous one. The pH is more similar to monastrell. And the total acidity is similar to Calnegre, higher than monastrell. With respect to quality wine, it's very good, but a little bit less than the previous one in anthocyanin content or total phenol content. So in summary, from 3 red varieties with high phenol content and adapted to our climate are characterized by having a less production than monastrell, but the production is very good. And a very high acidity, very, very high phenol content. I have to point out other aspect, the harvest moment, because these 3 varieties are early varieties than monastrell. In the last years, it's very common in our region episode of torrential rains. So with these varieties are harvested before these torrential rains happen because are more or less at the middle of the September. So the last variety is Calblanque. Calblanque is a white variety, but it's a cross the monastrell with Cabernet Sauvignon. These are 2 red varieties. We obtain white varieties. And the harvesting moment is in the second half of August, very similar to Mirtia, 33 days before monastrell. And with respect to quality grade, the production is very good, higher than 9,000 kilos per hectare. The pH very good, 3.44 approximately. The total acidity higher than monastrell, more or less than double. And the malleacity is very high, double than monastrell. And regarding quality wine, I have to say that the alcohol level is approximately 12%. The malleacity shows 2.5 grams per liter. And the wine of this variety are very aromatic because they have a very high concentration of terpenes. Terpenes are compounds related to their own variety, or is a compound related to aromas to vegetables and grass, or very fruity because they are a high concentration of this. Well, IMIDA are collaborating with the sector. Some of the wineries belong to the 3 origin denominations, Ruya, Jumilla, and Yecla, have some of our new varieties planted in their wineries, because for us it's very important to know the behavior of this new variety in different environments. because I said previously, we are planting our experimental tree. In Stepfather, we are participating in a national project because in which are participating other research centers and other wineries from different parts of Spain. This research center at these wineries are going to plant 2 of our new varieties, Cal Blanque and Cal Negres, in the next year. Again, for us, it's very important to know the behavior of these new varieties in different soils and different climates. So we are going to expect for the result in the future. As said previously, we are going to try to work with different research lines. Another research line we are working is obtaining new varieties with low sugar content and adapted to our climate. The objective of this line is obtain wines with low alcohol content, but with high phenol content, and therefore high quality wines. How do we obtain these new varieties? Well, we use initial process, and we process between them, and then we obtain 2,258 new plants, and then we select it, as I said previously, and nowadays we are having selected 5 new varieties, T4, T11, T75, T81, and T82. And these new varieties are characterized by having a very high acidity, very high phenol content, and less sugar content at harvest moment. An example of the wine of these new varieties, because we are in the second phase of selection by wine quality, is we can see on the slide, the graph. As we can see, the color intensity of the total polyphenol contents of the wine of the new variety are very high, the double or the triple of the values obtained by monastery wine. I have to point out the alcohol content of these new varieties, because here range between 10.4 and 12.5 approximately. Another line we are working is obtaining new varieties tolerant of the medium and medium. These are the main pests in vineyards. And we are obtaining this new variety by crossing between monastery and other varieties with resistant gen to the pests. These varieties are Regents, Ismi Marcana, Asolaris. Right now we are fertilizing the field which is resistant to powdery mildew. The last research line we are working is obtaining new varieties tolerant to drought and adapted to our climate. We are studying 3 new genotypes. One is the cross between Monastrell and Syrah, and the other one is the crossing between Monastrell and Cabernet Sauvignon. And we are compared to their parentals, Syrah, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Monastrell. And we are studying these new genotypes in 2 irrigation treatments. One of them is controlled deficit irrigation, in where we apply the 60% of the growth evapotranspiration. And the other irrigation treatment is a rainfall. We only provide the water for precipitation. Because we are in the second phase selection by wine quality, I am going to show some of the results obtained in their wines. As we can observe on the graph, the color intensity of the total polyphenol is very high in comparison to their parentals. If we are taking account the irrigation treatment, we can observe how overall 2 of the genotypes, Monastrell per Cabernet Sauvignon 80 or Monastrell per Syrah 104, have a similar behavior in the 2 irrigation treatments. So it means that these 2 new genotypes, or the new varieties, are very tolerant to drought and adapted to work. So in conclusion, for future wines in our area, we can offer new varieties produce high quality grapes and wines in a favorable condition. We can offer a unique, innovative and competitive material in the face of the climate crisis. And the most important, this will be a tool for the sector in a close future, but in no case will replace our monastery. Now I want to thank all the members of the teams for the Enology, Viticulture and Molecular Genetic 20 from the leader for this long process, the link work. in which have participated many people and continue participating. That's all. Thank you so much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Rocío, so much for your presentation. And now the last presentation before the round table is going to take place now with Joaquín Cámara from Cajate. He's assistant professor at the Agricultural Engineering School in Madrid, University Polytechnic University of Madrid, where I studied actually. And he's going to talk about the role of Humilla's soils in how it plays an important role in the resilience of our old vineyards. The theme of this trip, of this old vine trip, has been soil for survival. How to try to understand how soils have been key for our own vineyards to survive in this, you all know, extreme conditions we have in our Humilla region. And now, after some studies he has undertaken these past months, he's going to tell us about our soils.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank to the Regulatory Council of Video Humilla and to the Old Vine Conference. I'm proud to be part of this conference here in Humilla. My presentation is called the role of the soils, the role of soils in Humilla's terroirs. And the answer, I think, is easy. Hosting the vineyard of the best wine of the world. So, thank you for your attention. Certainly we are going to talk about the soils and the heterogeneity of the soils we are seeing these days during the field trips. So why we focus on soils when we are talking about vineyards? According to the resolution of the OIV, the definition of terroir is that vitivinicultural terroir is a concept which refers to an area in which collective knowledge of the interaction between the identifiable physical and biological environment and applied vitivinicultural practices develops, providing distinctive characteristics for the products originating from this area. Continuing with the definition, terroir includes a specific soil, topographic, climate, landscape, characteristics, and biodiversity features. It's important that, according to the soil forming factor definition proposed by Hans Jenny in the 14th century, in the past century, the soil is the result of the effect of these five factors. The soil is the result of the effect of climate and organisms on relief and biomaterial along the time. Okay? These factors, we have the climate and the organisms. The organisms are the vegetation and also the living beings. The living beings can be that run, but also a farmer with the tractor, okay? Modifying the soil properties as we have talked this morning that the method in which you plant, you can destroy instead of improve the soil properties. So, if we are now looking to the different factors, the soil forming factor affecting here in Jumilla, first of all, we have the climate. A recent study promoted by the Regulatory Council, the results, the territory has been divided in 5 different zones that are established based on the strong gradient between temperature and the mean temperature of the observatories that are into the classes, the specific classes that define the climate. We can see that increasing the altitude, we decrease the temperature and we increase but a little bit the average precipitation. Okay? Since the precipitation in this case in the lower parts of the territory is 279 millimeters per year, and in the upper parts are 407 millimeters per year. So, first of all, the terroir is conditioned by this climate, and according to the climate characteristic, we can divide the designation of origin in 4 terroirs. But also, another soil forming factor is the topography. So, based on the digital terrain model, that is this image of here, we have a huge variety of orientations and also of a slope gradient of the landscape. So the situation is getting more complex. We have 4 climates, but we have also all this variability according to the topographic characteristics of the region. One of the things that I have not taught yet is that in the climate study is not introduce this variability. 3 of the vineyards we have visited these days is north face, the orientation is north, and the last vineyard we have visited, the one in Terron, is the only one that is south. Okay? And this changed the microclimatic condition in the specific vineyard. And this microclimatic variability is not catch in the zoning. One of the reasons is that there are not enough weather stations to know about this variability. In the umbrias, in the slopes that are facing north, or in the south orientation. According to geology, these days we have talking about the heterogeneous geology of the region. For example, this map corresponds to another region of Spain that this region, the geological characteristic is granitic, and you can see how is a geological map of one of these regions. This in particular is in the central mountain range in Spain, in the region of Reus. This picture looks like a puzzle of big pieces. Okay, so this is the variability of the geology, the parent material in these areas. And this is an example of the variability at the same scale of the geological materials in our region. So it's the same, more or less. Although also the parts that are in this color are alluvial deposits. So these parts are more heterogeneous than the other one because the sedimentary process led different layers of different materials in no specific order. Okay. The clays, sand, gravel. So first of all, we have climate, only 4 classes, different 4 classes, before introduce the slope aspects, the orientation. After, with the topographic characterization, we have more complexity, and with the geology, we have more complexity. So, what is the result? This is the variety of soils that all the soil profile I have described these profiles in Jumilla for now. And I don't know how to answer the question, what is the typical soil of Jumilla? You can choose. What do you want, the red one? So we have very different situations that are the results, as Hans Jenny said in the definition of the soil forming factors, of the factors affecting different geologies, different climates, different parent materials, and this is the situation. Taxonomically, we can talk about alphisols or incertisols according to the USDA taxonomy classification, but I think that this classification is difficult to communicate. That is one of your business, the communication of the soil characteristics. Many of them we can talk that one of the main characteristics is a high content of carbonates, but about texture, we cannot extract a clear conclusion about that. 7 of these soil profiles we are going to visit, or we have already visited yet, and the other ones, but all of them are sampled, and the results of the texture analysis of all these samples is this one. The red dots are the superficial sample. So, according to soil texture, we can say that our soil are sandy loam on the surface. But if we go deeper, okay, we have a lot of samples that have also this texture, but we have a huge variety of textures, from sand to clay, going to sandy clay loam, clay loam. So the soils in Jumilla, the majority of the soils. We can see that it's sandy loam, but it's a huge simplification. Okay? The complexity we are seeing these days is higher than that conclusion. And just to highlight some soil properties, we can talk also about the rock fragments in the soils, in all the soil samples that we are analyzed. And we saw that the rock fragment, the average is around 40, with a minimum of 8 and a maximum of 8 countries. The second variable is the available water holding capacity. That is one, I think, especially in without irrigation, is one of the main role of the soils in Jumilla. That is, give the water to plants for complete the growing cycle. And we have an average of 100 millimeters. So this is 100 liters per square meter. And if you see the design of the plantations, the plants are separated more than in other regions. The plantation is 2.5 meters per 2.5 meters, so each plant has 6 meters more or less, or 6, almost 7 for exploring. So this can provide 700 millimeters per year for each plant. That is the reason of this density of plantation. And well, the minimum of the water holding capacity is the one we have seen this morning in La Hoya de Santa Ana, in the vineyards of Olivares. Nice fossils. Okay. And water holding capacity is only 47 millimeters per year. And the maximum is 150 liters per square meter. Okay. And other things that we are looking these days is the content of carbonates in the vineyards. That is also a characteristic of the vineyards in Jumilla. And surprisingly, the average content of total carbonate in all the samples is almost 50. So it's a huge quantity of carbonates in soil. The minimum is 40 and the maximum is 80, and the maximum is not an exception. You have seen that we have this content in different vineyards of which we have visited these days. And also, the same conclusion is according to the active calcium carbonate, where the average is 14, that is very high. Well, now, here the number changed. The minimum is 4, and the maximum is 14. Okay. And other things we have seen these days, the content of organic matter, the average was low, but not too much, because this content of carbonates prevent the metabolization, the mineralization of this organic matter. And the average content of organic matter is almost 1, is 0.9. That the Mediterranean condition is not too low. And okay, now yes, thank you for the attention.
I'm sure you'll join me in thanking Rocio and Joaquin for their presentations. Thank you. I've learned so much, and I'm looking forward to quizzing you a bit more. I'm going to start by asking a question to each of you, and then we're going to open the floor up for your questions and comments. So my first question is for Joaquin, and I wanted to know, in this exploratory study, did you find anything that surprised you?
Well, what a surprise.
I don't mean like physically.
Well,
In the pit.
really the soil properties itself, because you can have an idea about the characteristics of the soils in the region, but when you may open the soil profile, take the samples, analyze the root depth and all these things, you obtain results in the laboratory that you cannot expect. I don't know if this piece of soil has 20% of carbonates or 1% of organic matter. So for me, one of the conclusions or the most surprising thing for me is the adaptability of uncraft monastrel to soil conditions that are not easy for many of the commercial rootstock. And the monastrel can directly support this content of active calcium carbonate that very few commercial rootstock can resist. And maybe for this could be interesting register the monastrel as a rootstock. I don't know if it is possible.
Because, yeah. What do you think of that
know.
idea?
You have a,
Also no, because the same variety, no? Yeah,
well, but why not?
because you only can register new varieties. No, because if you use different rootstock,
Yeah.
it's not a different variety.
Yeah, but the varieties of the rootstock.
The problem is that it's not the Phylloxera attached to the roots of
Yeah.
monastery in other soils, and the reason that we have the commercial food is to prevent the Phylloxera.
Yeah.
So you cannot plant directly with the root of monastrel and Cabernet Sauvignon in another soil because the Phylloxera
Yeah.
can attack.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that Phylloxera attack all the clones of monastrel.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So this is a question that you've asked yourself.
Yes, but
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, interesting, one for further study. So there'd been in this region a long-standing regard for this ungrafted monastrel. It's something that is mentioned by a lot of great producers in your deck. You know, Umea, it's the identity of monastrel. So this is something that by long usage you value, but this study actually suggests initially that there could be a kind of an unexpected, very high adaptation of monastrel to these soils, rather than it just being kind of luck or usage. There's actually an adaptation that has developed in these biotypes. Do you think that it would make sense for the region to really focus on ungrafted monastrel as its kind of most premium sort of heritage product? I open that out to both of you.
Well, is illegal.
But
Yes, it's
well,
difficult.
the new plantings are not permitted, but the existing plantings of ungrafted monastrell, there are, 1,000 hectares?
At least.
At least. And they are permitted. They are obviously they have a finite life, but they seem to inspire a lot of creative brilliance with producers. And in terms of putting Jumilla on the map as a kind of fine wine region of Spain, this kind of, for one generation only, you can actually drink ungrafted monastrell. Is that something that you think you could make more of in your?
Well, yesterday's tasting, I would say the majority of the wines were ungrafted monastrell, old vines, of course, they were old vines. And well, this is something that we discussed in the council, first regulating the use of the words Pie Franco and old vine in Jumilla wines, so that we can really certify that it's true what the label is saying. And for the moment, no decision has come up. But in terms of promotion from the Jumilla wines, this is what we're doing: promoting in terms of premium wines, our most premium wines, ungrafted monastrell for sure. And I think that many of the wineries here present agree with us that most of our premium wines are ungrafted monastrell.
Could I ask for a show of hands from the people in the audience who, if you think it's critical that at some point the use of the terms Pie Franco and old vine become regulated within the denomination, do you want to, if you think it's critical that happens, could you raise your hand? Absolutely. Okay, so, and if you think it's nice to have, but it's okay probably to allow it to be, self-regulating, could you raise your hand? Okay, so I think most people think that it's important to have a certification, control of the use of the terms. I agree, actually. I think at some point, yeah. Okay. Sorry, have I just said something really controversial?
No. These are the conversations we usually have in the main meeting room in the council, so we'll keep them going on. So.
We have to get these wineries in the ruler position.
Okay. I think it's good to have the discussion and the debate, and I think that there comes a point when if you're starting to add value through the use of the term, you then need to protect the use of the term. And I think if we ever get to a point where a Pie Franco and old vine becomes so valuable that people are willing to pass off the wines, then it will kind of show that we've kind of made progress, but you probably want to regulate before you get to that point. And then I wanted to ask Rocío, when do you think that the new varieties that you have developed will start to be really planted in the region, and how do you see them being used alongside the existing varieties?
It's the interesting question.
$1 million question.
Yes, the $1 million, because it's a long process, I said in my presentation. But right now, we are giving our material to the breeds.
The nursery.
The nursery. So I will expecting by the nursery multiply the vegetal material, and then we are expecting that this material are for the sector. Yeah, we can serve with the sector.
Yeah. And will you, for example, give some of the planting material to some key wineries to ask them to plant it, to replant with this material, or how will you sort of roll out the actual plantings of these new varieties with commercial wineries?
Well, some wineries are already already experimental plantings. Experimental.
Yes, experimental. In our experimental winery, we have winemaking.
Winemakers and producers.
Yes, and producer in experimental design. So now some of these wineries and the producer have right now some of the new registered varieties, so they can use as new varieties because they planting in the past. So these new varieties only have these wineries and this producer at the moment.
The thing is that, as we spoke, to plant vines, you need to have authorization.
Exactly.
It's not free. You're not free to plant a vineyard whatever you want. It's just ultra-regulated crop. So once now that they're registered, and now they are authorized in the region of Murcia, soon they will be authorized in the region of Castilla-La Mancha, so in the Albacete part and Castilla-La Mancha part of the DO. And once the nursery have the plants, the material, then wineries with authorization to plant or wineries or producers will be able to plant commercial plants, because at the moment the only vineyards are experimental.
Yes.
And of the 4 new varieties, Cal Blanc, sorry, I'm trying to remember all of their names. Of the 4 new varieties, do you feel really confident about any of them that, in 100 years' time, you'll have 100-year-old Cal Blanc, that kind of planting to grow old?
Confident, yes, of course, because we are very confident in our new varieties because they are a very high potential. So we expect that in 100 years, our varieties are I don't know the solution, but I said in presentation, it's a tool for the sector here in the region of Murcia, because the climate change is a reality. So we need different tools to solve the problem. So we, as IMIDA, as a research center, we offer this material for the solution for the sector if they want, of course.
We won't see them in 100 years old, but in 50 years, some of us will, hopefully.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you was, at the end of your presentation, you had in very big font, these new varieties will not replace our Monastrell.
Yes,
what was the thinking behind that statement?
I mean that the new varieties are the tool for the region in order to mix with Monastrell. For example, if we want to solve some of the problems of the Monastrell in the future, we can mix to do copas or to elaborate together with Monastrell with different techniques in the wineries. It's a tool we can use in different ways in order to get wines with a high quality in our regions.
So would you think of Monastrell as like a bit of a problem child or a secret superhero? Is it okay? And can I ask another hands up question to the audience? We know that Monastrell, we've had some fantastic wines, and we know that Monastrell can reach and its wines can present with relatively high alcohol, 14.5, 15, 15.5. Who thinks of itself that is a big problem? Okay, nobody. Of course, we need balance, but in and of itself.
Whenever there's balance, there's no problem.
Okay. And Maya says, wherever there's balance, there's no problem. Okay, I agree. I don't think it's a problem child. I think at its best, I think it's the most incredible variety, full of paradox and beautiful texture and a kind of an elemental power, kind of like the place. Would anyone like to ask some questions for our speakers? Yes.
Thank you. After Sarah's tough questions, I'm going to throw an easy one in your presentation. You characterized the Monastrell variety as having a neutral flavor. Could you expand on that a little bit? I was surprised to see that.
Yeah. It's in the grape. In the first slide. No, it's the grape. It's a grape. No, the wine. The wine has a very aromatic flavors. It's a characterization of the grape.
Of the grape, of the fresh grape.
But how do you characterize the grape as having neutral flavor? That's the question.
No.
Maybe if you think about a Muscat grape that you eat it, it's very aromatic, and maybe a Monastrell fresh grape. There are some winemakers behind who can maybe attest to this, no? That Monastrell fresh grape is not especially aromatic. Like most of them, yeah. So you wouldn't have Monastrell for dessert, Monastrell grapes, probably.
But the wine are very aromatic.
Connect with something. As far as I know, when viticulturists describe the grapes, there are very few aromatic grapes. There's like Muscat, Gewürztraminer, Alvarillo, maybe in between. But most of the grapes, as far as I know, are described as neutral. But when they describe the grape,
The grape.
yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
I have a question for you.
For me?
Yes.
Okay. Hay another question?
Later.
Later, bien, prueba.
So Sarah, you noted that some areas have started to define exactly what an old vine is. And you referenced that, particularly in Spain, so Rioja saying 70 years and Rioja 35. Do you think that might be confusing to consumers on a label if there's slightly different definitions coming from the same country?
I think it could be, but they're probably used to being confused. I mean, how do you convey everything about wine? I think that having different definitions is valid and kind of authentic from the wine making and the viticultural point of view, because terrains are so different, and some environments are really like hard yards for grapes. It's like, people have hard lives, and vines can have harder lives. So I think that the term old vine, heritage vineyard, should allow for a level of local determination that is agreed at by that collective know-how of growers who think, actually here, like the South Africans, we're going with 35 years. I mean, they have much older than that, but that's their minimum. And then on their seal, they simply have heritage vineyard. So they basically, I think heritage vineyard is a great term, by the way. I would use that rather than old vine. So I think you almost put the number like behind the scenes, and then you have the term this is a heritage vineyard, you know, basically agreed on by the collective of people making it, and the whole history of Appellation, you know, Consejo Reguladores, it all starts with a group of relatively like-minded producers coming together in a collective, and then it being formalized with time. So yeah, I mean, it can be confusing, but it can just join the club of confusing stroke intriguing things about wine. Yeah.
No.
Ana.
Luego con un...
I just wanted to comment on the last point that you made about labelling. What some regions, and Maya will probably tell me if I'm wrong here, but I believe in Ribera del Duero, if you put old vine on the label, you then have to define it on the back label. If you put altitude, high altitude on the front label, you then have to say above 800 meters or whatever. So they've kind of got these different, you know, you can only say it on the label if it's justified with the facts on the back label.
That's for Ribera del Duero, but not for other regions.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Rioja has also recently introduced new norms, so you say all vines in Rioja, you have to prove it.
Yes.
So it depends on the relation.
Yeah.
It's complicated. Perhaps it would be great to have, like a global seal for all vineyards in Spain. That would be great, and then small differences for each vineyard. Like the rapid vineyards. In Granada, for instance, the fact that they say 70 years is because they had the photographs from the American flags that they could prove that these vineyards were not owned.
Yeah.
So they really wanted to be period, and they had the way to prove it, and that's the way they choose the 70. There's an explanation for the 70 years in the case of Europe.
Yes, that's a really lovely piece of historical interest. Actually, this was this during the time of Franco, when they were basically the American aerial mapping. So they took photographs, which then the vignerons were then able to go back and refer to, and they could say, well, look, here's this vineyard, and it was a kind of high resolution image. So they were able to actually prove it.
Producers, and they have there are several flights because of different areas and different regions. But most areas are really mapped, and some producers visit them and they should be there. Yeah. There were already vines here. Yeah. 1950s or.
And actually, this is another reason for sometimes the minimum age being set at a kind of an uncontroversial kind of minimum provable level, because sometimes some regions have fantastic documentation able to attest to these claims, or individual producers do, but very often actually this information is lost. But that's why we wanted to create the Old Vine Registry, so that moving forward at least there is a record of some kind. Because it's highly variable, and that's why we have this very local solutions to it, which I think is better than not trying to do anything. But yeah.
I would add something. I think in the case of Spain, I think it should be the Spanish ministry who should regulate some terms for everyone, because then we would all have the same minimum, at least minimum criteria, and not like right now that everybody is regulating or not regulating, and how it's impossible the consumer to not be confused with this. Crazy use of terms in one region or the other, and I think it's the ministry's duty as it has regulated in the past many other terms. I think it's time now. No one of the ministry here.
If you all just do really crazy things, will the ministry sort of be provoked into action?
Well, who knows? I don't know.
I had a question specifically for Joaquin, if we could move on. I wondered if you could summarise for us the features of soil, and I know you said that it's very varied across Jumilla, but if there are a few key factors that you think have allowed Monastrell to grow old in such an extreme Mediterranean climate.
Can you repeat this, please?
Do you want me to say it in Spanish? ¿Podrías resumir? Y he entendido que hay muchas variedades de suelos en Jumilla, pero si podrías resumir algunos puntos, algunos factores del suelo de aquí que ha significado que Monastrell ha podido crecer, llegar a tener más de 35, 50 años en un clima tan extremo, tan mediterráneo.
Thank you. Ahora entiendo mucho mejor tu inglés. Gracias. Well, I think that the characteristics of the soils is the water holding capacity. Also the stoniness in the surface, or the capacity of some layers to preserve the wetness of the soil, as we have seen this morning in Cerrón. One of the characteristics that more surprised me for the results is the content of the active calcium carbonate. That, for the audience, the difference between total carbonate and the active calcium carbonate is that total carbonate is determined with a strong acid. So you valorize all the carbonates in the soil, but the active carbonate is determined with, I don't know if this is right in English, with soft acids, not
soft acids.
Yes, is because the roots, when for growing, develop an acid environment close to the root to degrade the soils and can enter in the soil. And with this valorization with soft acid, you determine this content of calcium carbonate that can be degraded by soft acids and not strong acids. And for me is very surprising because I am used to use for advising wine growers the tables of the characteristics of the rootstock, and I think that more than 20% of calcium carbonate, active calcium carbonate, only the 140 Ruggeri, and I don't know if another can survive and develop well in this kind of soils. And according to the results of the profiles we have described for this conference, the contents in some soils are higher than this 20%. It's 28%, and you have a nice develop of the root system of the Monastrell. So for me, it's surprising.
One more.
Okay. Yes.
Hi, It's a question for actually the whole group. We've tried, and we know Monastrell is the great Euphorbia, but we've tried some wonderful white wines from the region, and the study you did of the new clones, you've got a white grape varietal there. Do we feel as a group that white wines are important to this region going forward with higher alcohols and people looking for less alcohol in wines? Most of them are 13%, 13.5, your white wines. Do you feel that white wines have a future in this region? And that's for the whole group as well, show of hands or...
Yes. Sorry.
I agree.
Me too. Yes. Go white wines, go.
Some of the winemakers as well, do they feel that white wines are important for the future of this region? Like some of these guys, because they're the ones making the wines, producing these wonderful Monastrells, but we've had some really nice white wines as well.
And you will taste much more immediately.
Yeah.
Because we have prepared a stand tasting in Salones, Maria Luna. It's not so far from here. We go in the bus. And you will have the chance to taste all the white wines from our wineries. Well, not all. Some. And some more.
Thank you. Could I please thank Rocio and Joachim, and also, of course, Carolina. Thank you for your presentations. And can I also thank, I didn't do this earlier, I'd like to thank our regional ambassador for the Old Vine Conference, Anna Harris-Noble, who put us on to EMEA and is my fantastic guide to all things great happening in Spain. And it was Anna who introduced us, and I'm absolutely thrilled that she did. And thank you for helping to bring all of this together. So let's go taste and have dinner.